Hi, welcome to our Korero on neurodiversity. I'm Becky, this is Vanessa and Michelle, and we're all part of Remarkable Minds. We're experts in neurodiversity. We're here today because we just wanted to share some personal stories of what it's actually like to be neurodiverse as an adult in the workplace today. And so I'm just going to ask Vanessa and Michelle a couple of questions. They're going to give us some short answers, and you're going to get a little bit of insight on what it's really like. So my first question is going to go to Michelle, and it is, Michelle, how did you find out that you were neurodiverse? Did you get a diagnosis when you were young?
Thanks and hello everybody, kia ora. No, I didn't actually. I'm very late in life and late in my career did I find out that I was neurodiverse, and it was quite traumatic, to be honest with you. I'd gone for a job interview and I really, really wanted the job. A great company, great role. I really wanted to make a difference for them, and the interview went really, really well. And then the guy said to me, "Hey, that's fantastic. When can you start?" And I told them, and he said, "Oh, well, we have this hurdle." I said, "Oh, what's the hurdle?" And he said, "Oh, you have to do psychometric testing."
Mm,
And my heart
mm,
stopped, because I've done psychometric testing twice before in my life, and I've been awful at it, really, really dreadful. So for those people who don't know what psychometric testing is, it's like doing a series of tests and they're timed, so you're under pressure to do them. So I spent the day before I was going to take the test, I spent the whole day doing practice tests. I thought, if I practice, I'll get it right. Well, unfortunately, on the day of the test, I did a meditation. I thought, breathe, you can do this. I did the testing, and I knew at the end of the testing I hadn't done very well, which
mm,
really spoilt my weekend, to be honest with you. And then on the Monday, I got a call from the recruitment agency that I'd gone through for the role. And they'd said, unfortunately, I hadn't met the standard for the psychometric testing. And so they weren't going to take me further. And I was really heartbroken. I actually burst into tears, and she was quite surprised. And then I thought, what's wrong with me is what I thought. Why can't I do this? I've had a really successful career. I'm pretty good at what I do. Why am I so rubbish at psychometric testing? So I just Googled it. And then I went, ah, okay, maybe I'm dyslexic.
mm, mm.
And that's when the penny dropped.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Michelle. That's a really heart-wrenching experience, isn't it? That's just a really painful way to discover that you might be dyslexic, and hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. So next up is Vanessa. Vanessa, you want to share with us how you found out that you were dyslexic?
Sure. So my story actually starts with my son, who was this beautiful, bright, happy, curious child. And he went to school and he just really started failing at reading and spelling. And it was a really painful journey because I didn't know how to help him. And he just couldn't do what the other kids could do. So he was diagnosed with dyslexia, which was fantastic because then we started understanding what was going on. But I still didn't realize that I could potentially be dyslexic. I had no idea it is hereditary. And so often, if your child has been diagnosed with a neurodiversity, then often you will start seeing it in your family. But for me, I have always been quite vivacious and chatty, but also quite disorganized and a little bit chaotic. And I used to be stressed all the time. And I just never seemed to find things as easy as other people. And I just used to think that was because there was something wrong with me, really. If I'm really honest, I would think everybody else was kind of normal, and then there was me. So interestingly enough, I started my training to become a dyslexia facilitator, and that's when I discovered my own dyslexia. And I actually discovered it by not hearing some instructions properly and doing something completely different from the rest of the group. Mm-hmm. And that was my aha moment. It was like, oh, maybe there's a reason behind this. Maybe my dyslexia is why I didn't take the instructions in properly. And that was my big moment. So it really is a journey, I think, when you start discovering dyslexia and neurodiversity. It's a journey for everybody, but I think a lot of children are getting diagnosed these days. So I was in my 40s when I found out. So a bit like Michelle, it was quite later on in life. And yeah, it was definitely a bit of a shock.
But what I'm really hearing is that for both of you, it was like once you had the awareness of what dyslexia actually looked like, you could recognize that it could be a challenge that you're actually dealing with. Whereas before you'd maybe just got through life and thought, oh, it's just me, there's something wrong with me, it's my fault. But once you start to investigate it and start to have that awareness, then things start to change for you, eh? So my second question to you is all about change, actually. That's a good segue. What has changed for you since you've realized or discovered or been diagnosed with dyslexia? Michelle, let's start with you. We'll go back to you.
Well, I'm currently trying to stop myself from fidgeting with my chair, which I've noticed I'm doing, because I actually thought dyslexia was you couldn't read and write. And I was really good at reading and writing. As a kid, I learned to read and write really early. What was challenging for me at school was actually remembering stuff. I couldn't pass an exam to save my life. And it was super hard for me, and I never understood why I couldn't remember things. And so I hadn't realized that dyslexia wasn't just you can't read and write. I didn't know that there was lots of different branches of it. And so for me, what's changed is this relief that other people can be like me, and I'm not the only one, and it's not, I know I'm not stupid. Yeah. I just know I have to work a lot harder than a lot of other people to remember certain information in a certain way. And also what's changed is that I've been doing a lot of research on the brain, and what I've done is I've done a few brain assessments. And what's been interesting is that I've got a really low executive function. And when I looked at that in line with neurodiversity, I went, wow, a lot of neurodiverse people have got low executive function. So what has changed for me is, instead of being ashamed of the fact that I can't remember stuff and it takes me twice as long to do things, is that I'm more and more interested in helping other people understand how to understand themselves and just have a more fulfilling life. And by the way, my nephew is on the spectrum. My great nephew is really on the spectrum, and yes, it runs in families. So go figure.
Absolutely, it is very hereditary. Absolutely, definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Michelle. And Vanessa, what would you like to say about how things have changed for you since you had a diagnosis or realized you were neurodiverse?
Where do I start? I think understanding why you are struggling with something or why you have a certain behavior is just huge. It's so empowering. And I would say that's probably the biggest change that happened for me. Was a bit like Michelle. I stopped being ashamed of, getting something wrong or not turning up to the appointment on the right day or forgetting I had a meeting, which were all really common occurrences in my life. So as Michelle said, that's all to do with executive functioning. And taking away the shame and being able to say, well, actually, I'm dyslexic, so can I just ask you that again, is actually really powerful, because it's when you're trying to hide the fact that you're struggling, whether that be in a relationship, in work, parenting, in life, that's what actually causes the stress. So probably one of the biggest changes for me is just the reduction in stress in my life, because I'm just not as stressed as I used to be. I understand why I make a mistake, and I can now say, can you help me with that? Can you repeat it? I'm just going to check. And that's been huge. And often I'm like Michelle, I can, spelling and reading and writing isn't a big issue for me. Although I have realized that scan reading is part of being dyslexic. So, I do scan read a lot. Whereas now I know I have to slow that down and really take in information. But yeah, I think the biggest change for me overall is just that freedom from being stressed and having to try and hide your struggles. And I think there are so many adults out there who are living with that level of stress in their lives. And it's just horrendous. And there are just a couple of different ways of doing things that can really make a difference. So once you have that awareness, you can actually start that acceptance of yourself. And that to me is the key part. And then once you've done that, you can find some different actions to take that will make your life less stressful. And, you know, I'm like Michelle, I'm passionate now about talking to people about being dyslexic or neurodiverse, because you can't tell by looking at someone who's neurodiverse and who's not. And, you know, the estimates are that 1 in 5 people have some type of neurodiversity. So that's huge if you think about it. Yeah. And so because I'm dyslexic, I'm going to check my notes and make sure that I've talked about everything I talked about.
No, you're all good. Is there anything you missed, Michelle, that you wanted to add in to now? No.
I'm conscious of the time. I just wanted to wrap up by saying I'm also blessed, because I feel that my neurodiversity has given me different tools to be able to think about things differently and really creatively, and I really love the fact that it enables me to be more empathetic with people and curious about things that I might not have been curious about if I'd understood everything my teachers are telling me at the time.
Absolutely.
Whether it be at school, at work, any sort of mentor, you know. So it's also a blessing for me, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah. I think that's really an amazing way to talk about it, Michelle, is that having it as a gift and something that's really given you things in your life that you wouldn't have had otherwise, but it's then the understanding of it and the awareness of it and being able to work with it rather than fighting it and hiding it, as Vanessa was talking about. Absolutely.
And I think that is a really good point to make, Michelle. You know, it's given me such a creative visual mind, and you know, I have loads of ideas, and that's great, but it's then just working with someone who's Becky who can channel those ideas and also help them into completion. So once again, there are some great things about being dyslexic once you know how to manage it, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're wrapping up there, ladies. Thank you very much for sharing your personal stories with us, and I hope you've enjoyed our little kororo about neurodiversity. And if you want any more information, or you need any help, or you're looking for some tools in your workplace to help people with neurodiversity, then just get in touch with us and we'd be happy to chat with you. So bye.
Capitiamo.